Hey everybody, hope you're all doing very well. Um, Decided to do a little video tonight. Yeah, it's a little bit of a glare there. Pardon the bald head. Uh, One of the folks on the channel had a question. Rob in New York, I'm talking to you. And your question was, should I spend money on eggs from eBay? And I figured rather than typing up just a short little response, I'd kind of go into my thoughts on buying hatching eggs and also ways to get started in gamefowl. So first off, let's talk about the eggs themselves. Um, Generally speaking, whatever eggs you buy, there will be a disclaimer that says cannot guarantee hatchability. And the reason for that is because when they ship the eggs, it doesn't matter how well they package them, how honest the breeder is, how fresh the eggs are. These eggs are at the mercy of the Postal Service and the weather, and things happen. You know, you get a careless employee, or you get a machine malfunction, or a bad road. Those eggs are trashed. That's just how it goes. So, for anyone to be able to make a living at that, if they were refunding every time somebody had that problem of the eggs not hatching or having a low rate, there wouldn't be any money in it. So the people who sell, they say I can't guarantee hatchability. And I've had eggs shipped to me twice. One time I had one chick out of 2 dozen eggs hatch, and it died 3 days later. But there was a lot of complications with that order, just getting to me. The other time, my dad and I bought about 600 quail eggs, and I think we had a little over 50 to 60% hatch rate on them. And they shipped from Kentucky clear to Nebraska. So it is possible to get hatching eggs and produce chicks. Now, I know there's a lot of guys down south who are like, oh, all you got to do is just drive down the road, go to your feed store, ask. You'll find somebody with game chickens. Well, sorry to break it to you, it ain't that way in the rest of the country. I don't know how it is in upstate New York, but I'm willing to bet that the few people who do still have game fowl up there are very tight-lipped about it, especially with all the legal attention that's happened up there in the recent years with Tommy Carano. If you want to get up to speed on that, check out my playlist involving him and laws about game fowl. But basically, they're just trying to enjoy their birds and enjoy their life, and they don't want the attention. So there's people who they got family, don't even know they have chickens. It's just their thing. Nothing wrong with that. Other people, they take them to shows, and you're going to find your own comfort zone. Now, I'm glad that you said that you're looking for specific bloodlines, but that you're also open to anything really. Because my advice to you would be this. If you do have to buy online, try to buy either young birds or better yet, adult birds. Now, a lot of people get scared off by the cost of shipping. I understand. It's not cheap. Um, Pretty much all of the game fowl I have or have had in the past, I've had to ship in. There wasn't anyone around me that had them, or if they did, I didn't speak enough Spanish and didn't know where they were anyway. But look at it this way. Let's say you got to put 70 bucks into shipping. It's let's say $100 for a pair of crossbreds. Now, some people, depending on what they're doing, they'll call them grades. If they're crossing them to a Zeal, the old guys would maybe call them battle crosses. They tend to shy away from that nowadays for obvious reasons. But you know, yard hatch, that's another way to go, is if you find someone selling yard hatch or yard monkeys, they call them sometimes. Basically, all that means is they had some hens running loose. They bred to whatever roosters they had tied out, and they can't tell you what bloodline it is 100% for certain. unless you come across somebody that has only one bloodline on their place, and there's not very many guys that are that way. But you're going to be, think of them as training wheel birds. You know, the first gamefowl I got 4 pair. And I lost one rooster not even within 24 hours from beginner mistakes. And I lost one a few weeks later because he was really wormy. I didn't notice it. So by the time I actually got ready to breed next season, I was down to 2 out of the 4 pairs. Those kinds of things can happen. I will say though that whoever you decide to buy from, which brings me to my other point, whatever you decide to buy, if you're set on getting purebreds, do the research on the bloodlines, know what went into them, what kind of off colors they throw, etc., etc. Just try to take as much surprise out of it as you can for yourself. And not only that, but you're trying to avoid a situation where a guy sells you a rose-combed Sid Taylor, and then you find out, 2 or 3 years into breeding him that bird was half Bantam, and you just completely messed up your entire breeding program. So research the birds you're looking for, and once you find breeders whose birds you like, research them as well. Get good feedback on them. There's tons of gamefowl groups on Facebook. Join, learn, study, ask questions. And once you find somebody whose birds you like, say, hey folks, has anybody bought from this guy, If possible, try to find you a breeder that's within a reasonable driving distance. And I can't tell you what that is, but for me, reasonable driving distance could be a 10-hour drive if it's something I really want. For you, 30 minutes might be pushing it. I can't say. But the reason I say that is you can go around their yard, you can see what kind of condition they keep their animals in, you can see how uniform or ununiform the bloodlines are, and you might go there for one type of bird and decide once you get there that you like a different kind better and go home with them. And best of all, it sets you up for potentially having a mentor in the breed. Now, if you don't know if you're quite ready to jump into American games, you can start off slow. When I was a kid, I started off with Old English Bantams, then I got large fowl Old English. And there's plenty of guys out there that are trying to promote large fowl Old English right now, and they are a showable breed. I mean, you can show your American games too, but they are recognized, the Old English are recognized with the American Poultry Association. And just because someone calls them show quality Old English doesn't necessarily mean that they're not gamey. One article I read in particular, a guy wanted to create his own bloodline of large fowl Old English, and the birds that he sought out to do it with involved Warhorse and I think Arkansas Travelers, if I remember correctly. So it's a good possibility that those birds have American game in them. It's just that not all of them do, and you can talk to the breeders and see kind of what level of gameness they're at to get a feel for them. The Old English large fowl that I had, yeah, the males would get after each other, but you could actually keep them together in the same pen. American games, no, you cannot. So I hope that clarifies a few things, but like I was saying earlier, if you have to ship in some adult birds, let's say you put $170 into it, well, by the time you ship eggs and you get them in, $100 for a dozen or whatever, pay the shipping, go through the process of hatching them. Maybe you have a good hatch, maybe you don't. If you don't have a good hatch and you got to get more eggs, then you got to go through the process again. In my opinion, it's cheaper in the long run to get the adults, and you have a better idea of what you're getting right off the bat. So, hopefully that helps. And the other thing is, I know you said sweaters and kelsos. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, they're very popular. So are hatch. So those will be easier to find in some of the older bloodlines. But you gotta remember, just because a bird looks like a sweater doesn't mean it is a sweater. And just because a bird doesn't look like a sweater doesn't necessarily mean it's a sweater. That's where the research comes in. And another option for you other than Facebook would be go to your local poultry shows or poultry swaps. You might find some people there selling some. I honestly can't recommend anyone in your home state because I don't really know anyone out there. But you never know. There might even be people watching this channel who will reach out to you and say, hey, get a hold of me. I can probably help you get started. And that's a great thing about the gamefowl community is if you're serious about it, there's people out there who'll take the time to help you as long as you're willing to learn. So I wish you the best of luck on that. Now, just as an added little bonus here for people, and this kind of goes back to how they used to do it back in the day. It used to be that you'd order your birds through publications. There were 3 gamefowl publications that were published in the U.S. at one time, and up until the turn of this century, all 3 were still in publication. They'd all ran somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100 years, if I recall. 2 of them went out of business. 1 is still going. I haven't subscribed to it in several years, and I feel guilty about that because it is a piece of living history. But at the same time, from what I understand, it's mostly ads now and very little content. And I'm going to show you just what I'm talking about here. So that's how thick this particular publication was. This copy's from January of 1996. I used to go on eBay and purchase these as research and history collection. I don't really do that anymore, but that's because I'm putting my money towards building the farm. Someday I'll probably get back into it. I just hope that there's people still selling them. But you can still get copies of these magazines on eBay, or again in those gamefowl groups on Facebook. People sell their collections from time to time. But again, January 1996. That's how thick it was back then. Nowadays, well, I can't even say nowadays to be honest. This is from July of 2006. Okay? So, July 2006. That's how much has changed just in that time dealing with these fowl and the legalities of the sport and that kind of thing. Once all the states outlawed it, there wasn't a whole lot to report on. And it was mostly rehashing of old articles on breeding and feed selection and that kind of thing. I'm told that it's actually even thinner than this at this point. I don't know for sure. But here is the part where I say, like I said, I am a collector of history, and that's what attracted me to these books. I bought this sometime probably around 10 years ago, and it is one of the publications that's no longer in business. It was called Grit and Steel. Check out the date on that, 1914. All I can say is, if you're a history buff, you can still find magazines like this. I actually have a few older than 1914 in my collection, and I have run across guys who have some from the 1880s and 1890s. Haven't been able to purchase off of them, obviously, but that's how people used to get gamefowl when, before the internet and before all that kind of thing. If you didn't know somebody, you subscribed to the newspapers and the newsletters, and there was for sale ads in there, and you'd write the birds that come in either by train or postal service, and that's how that worked. So anyhow, Rob, thanks for listening to my rambling on. I hope it gave you some good tips here, and wish you the best of luck, and I hope you find these birds are for you. So thanks for watching.